To model a car, I like to start with side view, so we're going to press 3 on the number pad to bring us into side view. Since we're making a lower poly car this time, we're going to use fewer vertices, but we're still going to use a similar method to my high poly car, because I think that method just works better, and I want to see how it works with a lower poly car style. So we're going to go to create, and we're going to choose circle, but instead of the default amount of vertices, we're going to change this by left clicking here and making it 10 and then pressing enter. So now we have 10 vertices to work with. Currently we're in object mode, so we're going to press tab to go to edit mode. Should see that this says edit mode now, and we're going to press R, Y, and then 90 to rotate the circle 90 degrees around the Y axis, and you should get this result here. So now we're going to press G and move it over. We're going to press S to scale it down, and you can use your middle mouse to zoom in and out like this so you can get a better view of things, and just try to position this relatively where you think it should be. We're going to move these points in a second, so it's not really important where exactly they are. Now we're going to select this point, hold shift, select this point, and press delete and choose vertices. We're going to go around one by one, just right clicking to select, G to move, and try to match it up with this outer circle. If you see any important points, like we have right here would be an important spot, you want to make sure you have a vertice there, so you can do Control R and then left click to add a vertex, and then we have these two important points here. We're also going to need something down here and then one over here, so Control R to add another point, and then G to move this, so that we have all of our important points except this one. We're going to Control R, add another point here, and just continue lining things up with the reference as best you can. We'll need more curvature here, so I'm going to do Control R and add another point, curve this out. And I'm just going to try to make this a little bit rounder by continuing to add points using Control R and G to move things. And again, this is going to be the end of this, so we need a point right here at the end. And I'm going to add some more points here by using Control R and then G to move. I know I'm going a little bit quicker, but I don't want this to be a horribly long tutorial like my last one. So if you need any help, feel free to ask. But right now we're just using Control R and G to move, right click to select things. There's really not much else other than left clicking these handles to move things around. That's basically the main controls that we're using. So now that we have this outer ring, we want this inner one, but actually this inner one connects up with the outer one right about here, so we don't need these 2 points. We're going to select the rest of these. I just selected one and then use C for circle select to get the rest of these. Now we're going to press E to extrude, right click to cancel the movement, S to scale, and I'm going to press Z to go into wireframe so we can see the reference again, and we're just going to line these up again. And what I like to do with these bottom points is I'm going to turn on vertex snapping, so left click here, change it to vertex, left click on the blue arrow, hold Control and snap it to this one so that they're perfectly aligned on the Z axis. And now we can actually do the same here. Grab the blue arrow, hold Control, snap it there, line it up with the reference, and this one you probably want to move down as well. You just want to keep a nice consistent flow throughout the whole model if you can. We actually may not need these because since this is going to be a low poly model, we're going to want to focus mostly on the texture. So for now I may just remove these. So it's a good chance to show you how to remove these points if you would like to. Let's just hold Alt and right click on this, press delete and choose dissolve edges, and now that edge is gone. Since we're doing a low poly model, we want to keep the vertex count as low as possible, so that's why I deleted that. Normally in a high poly model you would want to keep that there, but this is not going to be a high poly model. So you just want to continue going through And for this last one, we're actually going to take this one, right click it, hold shift, and select this one, Alt M, and choose at last, so it's going to merge at last. And now we have this line connecting up with this line, which is basically how it's supposed to be. And here I want to add a little more curvature, so I'm going to do Control R, add in a point by left clicking, and just add this little bit of extra curvature there. So this is the basic shape of the wheel arch. You can continue tweaking things as you feel necessary. This looks fine, I think. So once you're done with this wheel arch, you're going to do A twice to deselect and then select everything. Then do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel the movement, and we're just going to drag this to the back, and we're going to use this to make the back part of our wheel arch. We're going to do the same thing, just continue trying to line them up. When you move these bottom vertices, since they're aligned on the z-axis, you want to make sure you move them together when you're moving them on the z-axis. You can move them individually on the y-axis, which is this green arrow. And again, you're going to want to line your points up. So you see this line goes here, and it's the second point, so you want the second set of points, which would be this, to be lined up here with that line. So you just want to make sure your topology is matching the front to the back, if you know what I mean. You see how this line goes like this? That's how this line's going to end up. We may end up needing another point here for this line, but we'll find out in a minute. But just continue to line things up as best you can. Try to keep a consistent distance from here to here. And just continue lining these up by selecting with right click, G to move. This is a bit less of a beginner tutorial. This is kind of more of like, not really an advanced tutorial, but I'm not gonna go through all the commands like I did with the other tutorial, because that's part of the reason it took so long, and I'm gonna try to avoid that in just for the sake of time. So I'm gonna do Control R and add another point so that we can get this piece right here, so we can have this nice line to the back. And I'm gonna extend these out further, because you want to try to keep a consistent distance between, so you want these points to be halfway between this and this, for example, and you want to keep that all the way around. So these 2 points should be halfway between here and here. Basically, I mean, you don't have to be perfect, it's not that important, but that's basically what we want to try to do. So since we made a triangle out of these, we're just going to delete these points. So left click on one, hold shift, select the rest of them, press delete, choose vertices, and select these two, press E to extrude, and now we can continue. Extrude again to make this. If you have any questions, like if you don't know like how I did something, feel free to ask. I'm not trying to go fast to confuse you. I'm just trying to go faster so that this tutorial is a little bit quicker than the previous tutorial, basically. So we're going to bring this all the way down by extruding again. Just select and then shift select, then press E to extrude to bring this down. So that's basically what we need to get started with this car. You're going to want to select an equal amount of vertices on the front and the back. So if I select, for example, start here and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I just selected 1, held shift, and selected the rest, so we have 6. You're going to want to select 6 over here, so continue holding shift and right click. That's 4, 5, 6. So we may actually want one more point here so that this can go more like this. Or we can actually remove a point on the back. So I'm going to hold Alt, right click, delete, and dissolve edges. And we're going to slide these down some by selecting and then using G. So we're going to make this a little lower poly than what it would be. So now that should be a little better of a match, although not perfect. because I kind of want it to go all the way up here. So we still need one more point. We'll add a point down here with Control R, and then we're going to space these out a little better. And just continue adjusting them as you need to. So we're going to select 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, just click 1, hold Shift, and select the rest of them. That's 7, I guess. That's 7. You see the verts up there, it says 7. And continue holding Shift, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to go all the way up there. That may be a little too high, but we'll find out. So now that these are selected, I always use bridge edge loops. For me, I have a hotkey of Shift Q. You're not going to have that, it's not default. So you're going to have to go to Mesh, Edges, I think it's in Edges. Yes, bridge edge loops. You see mine is Shift Q for the hotkey. So let's say you want this hotkey to be Shift Q, just like mine is. You're going to have to right click on this, and I'm going to do remove shortcut because then it will look exactly like yours. So you want to go to Mesh, Edges, Bridge Edge Loops. You're going to want to right click here, add shortcut, hover your mouse over this area, and then press Shift and Q. Now it's Shift and Q for Bridge Edge Loops. So you can either just left click this now and it'll do it, or you could do Shift Q so you can be cool, and there you go. Alright, so now that we have this basic setup, we're going to want to start extruding up, and you basically just want to follow the line. So we have like this line already made because it's going to be part of this. So we want to start with this next line, and to do that we're going to need a lot of these top vertices, and usually what I do is I'll just hold Alt, right click this top, and that'll get the whole top right here. And what I'll do is do C for circle select, middle mouse to start deselecting, and then you see I deselected all these. And usually I'm just going to right click to get out of circle selection for a second. Usually what I'll do is I'll try to get the vertices that are like before this line, because there's always a line in the back. There's always a line like this for the back basically, or most of the time. So you want to just get the vertices before that and do the same thing over here, get the vertices that are before this line. So we want to deselect again. So C for circle select, middle mouse to deselect, right click to get out of circle selection. So we have the vertices that are just before this line and just before this one. It's not really necessary. I mean, you could deselect this one and this one if you wanted to and start like this. It's really up to you how many vertices you want to start with, but basically you want the ones that are closer to the top so that we can extrude up. Now what we're going to do is exactly that. So we're going to press E to extrude, right click to cancel, left click this blue arrow to pull them up, and we're going to press 7 to go to top view, and then drag them in this way so that we can tell which ones are the new vertices, and these are the original vertices, these are the new ones. Now we're going to press A twice to deselect and then select, and move this whole thing over to the side of the car, and you want these original vertices to be at the side of the car. And I'm just going to right click on one of these vertices, C for circle select, get all of these, and we're going to try to match it up with the side of the car here on the back, because the back is actually a little bit further in than the front, and we'll adjust these vertices in a minute. We're not going to mess with them now. So I'm going to press 3 to go to side view, and we're going to start lining up some of these vertices. So we can see here when we extrude this one, it has to follow this line. So we want to move this one closer to this line so that when we make a quad here, it's not going to be horribly stretched. Like it would be really stretched if we did it like this. So you want to move this over here more, and then you want to move this one over here some, and this as well, and just continue selecting and pressing G. So right click to select, G to grab. You can see my hotkeys down here. I'm still trying to explain it so you can follow along, but here is the basic curve, and then we'll add in this little quad later. So you'll notice I didn't follow this bottom line, and that's because this bottom line is it's different. Like, I've already looked at the pictures, like I practiced this a little. So like, that's once this loads. So these two lines are really separate. Like, you have this front line, it's hard to see here, and it stops, and then the down lower is where this bottom one starts. So they're not the same line, so you can't make them the same line. So we're just gonna leave this one higher because it's a different line that we need to make for that lower one. So instead we're gonna use this line to connect over to this side intake up here, which is what that is. But for now we're just gonna keep moving these around a bit with G. And there we go. So you should have something similar to this. Looks pretty decent. But we haven't moved them. So you notice we have two arrows. We have the Z-axis and the Y-axis. We haven't moved them on the X-axis. And to do that, we're going to press 7 on the number pad. And you'll remember we had the Y-axis in side view. See how we have the Y-axis? So we've already positioned them on the Y-axis and the Z-axis. So now in top view with 7, the only axis that's left is the X-axis. So you want to try to avoid moving it on the Y-axis because we've already positioned it using the Y-axis. So moving it twice is really, it doesn't make any sense to position it twice on an axis that you've already positioned it on. So all we need is the X-axis now. And the reverse would apply if we started in top view. All we would need is the Z-axis because that's the only one that's missing from top view. So we're going to position these where they should be on the X-axis and try to avoid moving it on the Y-axis. However, if you have a problem like this where this one clearly should be, you know, further back on the Y-axis. So if I do Control Z, this is where it was. This is where it should be, is right here. That's exactly where it needs to be. So if we go to side view again, we have a problem. And that's probably because our reference images are not lined up correctly. So I'm going to go to top view with 7, and that means I need to pull this forward a bit more. So I'm going to go to top view and just bring it down some, because it's not, like, this point should match up. So we need right there. That's good. This point should be right there. It's exactly where it should be. Well, no. I have to move it over here first so that I can use it. Okay, so move it in side view, which was 3, and then 7 to top view, and bring this down some by left clicking, dragging, and holding shift. That will allow you to move this. So that looks good, and just make sure all your other points look good now too, because you may have to slightly move them since we did move our reference image forward a bit. Not too much to cause major problems. So that is done. So we're going to press 3 to go to side view, and we need this other line here. So we're just going to press Control R, add in a loop cut like this, left click, and then right click to cancel. That will keep all these vertices centered. So these will stay centered, which is good. But this one actually has to move, so we're going to select it with right click, G to grab, and move it over here. And these are going to have to move up as well, so we're just going to move these up with G. This one I'm just going to grab the blue arrow and get them relatively close. So that's good. We shouldn't have to do too much in top, well actually we might. So let's go to top view with 7. We're going to have to move these a little. So this one needs to move over to where this line is. You could move this one a little, and then the rest of these are probably fine. And then we're going to select this and move this over. Same here. That's looking good. So now what we want to do is hold Alt, right click on this edge, and we're going to start bringing it towards where this window is. The goal is always to work your way towards the window, and then once you get to the window, you're going to make the area around the window. So we're going to need one more extrusion to get to the window, but I actually don't want to move all these vertices yet. Or, well, actually no, we're gonna do it anyway because we have this line to follow. So we're gonna press E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then drag this over on the x-axis so that we can tell the difference between the new vertices and the old ones. And now you're gonna one by one start moving them into place, but actually here we have the light, so we want this vertex to be back here, which means we want this vertex to be back here as well. Somewhere like this. So we may need to move this vertex again. Whoops. And this probably needs to be about here, I would say, and we'll add in more detail to this area to get that, the rest of that in a minute. This needs to follow this line like this. And then this needs to be all the way over here. Maybe we can use it. No, we shouldn't, because we need this line to go all the way down like that. And that's going to be a really big stretch from here to here, so we shouldn't do it that way. So back in top view with 7, we're going to continue moving these into place. And that looks good. So now we're going to work on the details that we missed. We need more points here to make this A pillar. So we're going to do Control R, add in a loop cut here by left clicking and then right clicking. Click on this point, G to grab, move it over. And I'm just going to reposition this a bit to make it match a bit better. And actually the way I think I did this the first time, I just held Alt, right click, deselect this vertex with shift and right click, press delete, dissolve edges, and we'll deal with that vertex in a second. So we're going to select these two vertices by left clicking or right clicking, holding shift and then right clicking this one, go to tools, subdivide, that'll give us an extra point, right click here, G to grab and move this into position because we need this line here. But now we have an end gone. To fix that, we're going to select this with right click, hold shift, right click this, alt M, or actually no. Select this, hold shift, select this one, alt M, and merge at last. So now we have two quads and should look okay, but all our normals are messed up. So actually what we have to do is go into edit mode again, press A twice, go to mesh, normals, recalculate outside. Things look okay. They may not look okay, but if we do in object mode, if we do smooth shading, they'll look a little bit better. So now tab back into edit mode, 7 for top view, and we're going to continue adding in more detail where we need it. So we need detail here, and we need detail here as well. So I'm going to actually press 3 to go into side view. So one of the areas we need detail is right here, where this would be. And then the door. You don't always have to do the door with a low poly model, but actually there's detail up here that needs vertices at this point. So we're going to make the door with Control R, then right click or left click, and then right click. And now we're going to just individually start positioning these vertices. You can use G or you can use the handles, whatever is appropriate, and you want to line these up with the door. This one, as we can see, this is lined up with this bottom line, so this vertex needs to continue being lined up with this bottom line, and we'll make this top line later on. We're not going to worry about it for now. So just continue lining these up using G, selecting with right click. And again, this vertex and this line needs to be lined up with one of these, so probably this one. I guess for now that's good. And then keep working your way up to the top until you're at the top. And that looks pretty good for now. So we also need this right here. We need this point, or this line. So we're going to do Control R, left click, right click, and start positioning them again by using G or the handles, whatever you feel is appropriate. I usually like to try to keep straight lines, so try to keep this nice and straight, or at least fairly straight. And remember, this needs to be on the bottom line. It's good enough, and the rest is probably good enough, except I'm going to straighten this out a bit so it looks a little nicer. And there we go. And we will need a point at the end of this, so we can add that now, I suppose, with Control R, left click, and then right click. You also notice we need another point down here to end this little triangle section. So we need points here and here, so adding a loop cut makes a bit of sense in this case. So we're going to put this at the end of this. Alright, I was just checking to make sure that one didn't have any endpoints or anything. And this one goes here. This one will down a little bit. This can move down some and over. I usually just try to make nice curves whenever I'm doing this, so just try to make it look decent. There's really no science to it. Just try to make it look cool, or look like it makes sense. So there's that, and we can actually add in, I don't think we need to though, we don't really need this, I don't think. I do not believe that we need this. It doesn't look like it. Because with a low poly car, what we're going to do is we're going to texture this in, if we do at all. We're just going to texture in the door. And there's no extra detail that these vertices would add, except for the fact that the door is there. So we're not going to add that in, at least not for now, until I change my mind. So this is looking good. And I think we need to go back to top view with 7. And just check to make sure all these things are lined up. Remember, we added these in to match up with this line here. And this was actually... okay. These need to be moved because these need to be over here, actually. So this needs to be over here, and this needs to be over here, and this needs to be over here, like that. And just continue making sure that all these are lined up properly, and it looks pretty good at this point. We could move this one back some and do the same with this one to make a little bit better spacing between these. And back to side view with 3 on the number pad. And actually what I want to do is go back to top view and select these vertices with circle select, so I'm going to select one, C for circle select, because we need to move these up some. I think we actually need to move all of them. We could have just... Anyway, now that all of them are selected, we're going to drag them up. And of course, we need to move them down to this point, because these 2 points, this one right here and this one right here, were the bottom of this A pillar. So they need to be at the bottom of the A pillar. The rest of these were lined up at the bottom of the window, or at the bottom of, like, usually this part would be the black part that goes around the window. So we want these at the bottom of that. Make sure this is at the bottom. Make sure this one's at the bottom. And it also needs to be lined up here. So yeah, our reference images are a little off, I guess, because, well, that's not too bad actually. Sometimes that's just going to happen where your reference images don't line up perfectly. You just make sure you follow one of them at least and make it match as close as you can in the other one. And it's usually not going to be too much of a problem. Things will look, you know, relatively fine. If you accidentally left click and you get this thing, just do Shift and S. Do cursor to center. That'll put it back in the center the way it should be. So something like this looks good. So now we have all the way up to the A pillar, and we have this nice edge here, like we would have right here. So we're good there. Right now, I guess we're just gonna save this and keep these videos a little shorter. We'll end this one here, and we'll continue by making the A pillar and the roof. So just go to File. Since we've already saved it once, we can just go to File and Save, and it will keep the name that we already gave it. If you want to give it a different name, go to File and Save As. Change the name, but I'm not going to. I'm going to save over this other file, so just go to Save as Blender File.